Welcome to Sleepy Stories, where curiosity and calm share the same quiet space. Here, we learn gently, letting understanding arrive without hurry. If sleep does not come right away, that is perfectly fine. Let your breath slow and allow these ideas to unfold as softly as the night itself. What matters is not remembering every fact, but feeling the quiet rhythm of discovery. If these moments help you rest, we kindly invite you to like and subscribe so that more nights can end in peaceful learning. Now let us turn to the theme of this journey: medicines from nature. Every heartbeat, every breath, every drop of sap or tide of seawater is a mixture of chemicals at work. Life, in its simplest definition, is chemistry that learned to repair itself. From that ability to repair arose the capacity to heal. Before hospitals, before language even, the world was already producing molecules that eased pain, fought infection, and balanced internal storms. The first pharmacy was the planet itself. Look closely at any living thing and you find a laboratory more intricate than any built by humans. Plants construct complex compounds to survive sunlight, drought, and predation. Some of those same molecules happen to calm our inflammation or kill our bacteria. Fungi weave antibiotics to compete with neighboring microbes. Marine organisms release toxins to paralyze prey, toxins that our scientists now refine into anesthetics. Nature does not design for us, yet its chemistry aligns with ours because we share the same molecular alphabet: carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and the quiet choreography of electrons between them. When we speak of natural medicine, we are speaking of relationships. The willow's bark relieves our fever because the salicylate it carries interferes with the same enzymes that cause our pain. The poppy's latex dulls suffering because its alkaloids mimic neurotransmitters within the human brain. The cinchona tree's bitter bark saves lives by halting the parasite that feeds inside red blood cells. These coincidences of structure are not miracles. They are continuities of chemistry. The molecules that protect a plant or animal often match the receptors that govern our physiology. Healing is recognition at the molecular level, one form of life acknowledging another. Human medicine began as observation. Hunters noticed that wounded animals sought certain herbs or clays. Gatherers learned by tasting, by remembering which leaves soothed and which harmed. Each discovery added a piece to an invisible map of survival. Over millennia, those experiences became tradition, and tradition became science. The journey from root to remedy, from bark to bottle, is the story of civilization refining its understanding of life's own design. Today's pharmacology may look like sterile glass and steel, but every pill on the shelf traces back to some living ancestor: a plant, a fungus, a bacterium, an animal. Even synthetic drugs often start with a natural scaffold, modified for stability or potency. The laboratory continues what the forest began. When chemists isolate an active ingredient or improve its efficiency, they are extending nature's experiment, not replacing it. To see medicine this way is to replace the old divide between natural and artificial with something gentler. Nature is not a place outside us. It includes our laboratories, our reasoning, our desire to understand. The compounds we discover in soil or sea are part of a continuous conversation, evolution speaking in the language of molecules, and us learning to listen more precisely. As you rest tonight, imagine this planet quietly working, roots exchanging minerals, algae releasing oxygen, bacteria inventing new defenses unseen by any microscope yet. Beneath every forest and ocean lies a constant experiment in healing. The story you will hear tonight follows that chemistry through time, from ancient healers who crushed leaves by hand to genetic engineers programming yeast to make plant compounds. It is the same story of curiosity, patience, and respect for the living formulas around us. If your eyes grow heavy as these ideas settle, let them. knowledge can arrive while consciousness drifts. The chemistry of sleep itself is a medicine, your body producing hormones, repairing tissues, balancing signals. You are part of nature's pharmacy, both patient and scientist. And so the journey begins, calmly, molecule by molecule, in the oldest laboratory of all, the living earth. Long before words like pharmacy or biology existed, survival depended on memory and observation. Imagine an early human watching another member of the group fall ill after eating a certain plant, or recover after chewing the leaves of another. Over generations, these fragments of experience formed patterns. Knowledge grew not from books but from lives lived close to the land. Healing began as a partnership between instinct and chance, guided by the same curiosity that still drives science today. Many animals still display this ancestral wisdom. Chimpanzees fold rough leaves of the aspilia plant to expel intestinal worms. Monarch butterflies lay eggs on milkweed to protect their larvae from parasites. Clay-eating parrots neutralize toxins in unripe seeds. These behaviors show that medicine existed in nature's playbook long before the human intellect gave it names. Life evolved not only to adapt but to repair itself, and that impulse, self-care at the biological level, set the stage for human understanding. For early humans, the body was both teacher and tool. They learned to distinguish between plants that burned the tongue and those that soothed it, between mushrooms that nourished and those that destroyed. Fire helped release aromas and resins, revealing how heat altered chemistry. Smoke from certain leaves calmed insects or lifted spirits. Boiled roots softened pain. Each experiment carried risk, yet curiosity persisted because the rewards were survival and comfort. The earliest healers were observers of patterns in the wild, which trees regrew fastest after storms, which herbs flourished where sickness was rare. The first doctors may have been hunters who understood the forest as a living body. They learned that taste, color, and scent were signals of hidden chemistry. Bitter often meant defensive compounds, alkaloids and tannins, powerful in small amounts. Sweetness suggested safety and nourishment. Such sensory heuristics guided trial and error across thousands of years until memory solidified into shared tradition. Archaeological evidence supports this long apprenticeship with nature. Pollen grains found in a Neanderthal burial in Shanidar Cave suggest deliberate placement of medicinal flowers. Residue on ancient grinding stones contains traces of herbal resins. These are small but profound clues. Early humans not only used plants but chose them for their properties. Healing had already moved from accident to intention. When we look back at those beginnings, it is tempting to imagine simplicity, but these were complex systems of knowledge encoded in myth, ritual, and song. A healer's chant might have preserved a sequence of steps: where to harvest a root, how long to dry it, when to mix it with honey or fat. Oral traditions carried pharmacological data through sound and story. In the absence of writing, memory itself became the laboratory notebook of humanity. Science today mirrors that same pattern-seeking behavior, only refined by method and instrument. We still test, observe, and record, only the scale has changed. The core process, trial, feedback, adjustment, remains identical. Every modern clinical trial echoes those early moments by the fire, when someone risked tasting a new leaf to ease a friend's pain. This segment reminds us that healing is not an invention but an inheritance. The hands that crush leaves or measure compounds belong to the same lineage of curiosity stretching back hundreds of millennia. Even now, when we isolate molecules and calculate dosages, we are continuing the first experiment nature ever conducted, the search for balance between harm and help. So, as you drift toward rest, consider that your body carries this ancient memory. Its responses to warmth, bitterness, fragrance, or touch are echoes of those first lessons. Healing begins where awareness meets pattern, and both were born beneath the open sky. As human communities grew and language took root, the scattered fragments of medicinal knowledge began to crystallize into systems. What once depended on memory and oral tradition evolved into written record, and the first pharmacologies were born. Around river valleys and fertile plains, societies learned to organize what they observed about healing into repeatable practice. Medicine became a collective memory preserved not by one healer, but by civilization itself. In Mesopotamia, clay tablets inscribed with cuneiform nearly 5,000 years old describe hundreds of plant preparations. They include instructions for brewing, drying, and mixing, the earliest known pharmacopoeia. Ancient Egyptians refined these ideas further. The Ebers Papyrus, written more than 3,000 years ago, lists hundreds of recipes combining honey, fig, onion, and willow. It treated pain, inflammation, and infection with a precision that still impresses scientists today. Honey's antibacterial properties, for example, are now known to arise from hydrogen peroxide and high sugar content, chemistry rediscovered by modern research. In India, the Ayurveda tradition divided remedies according to the balance of elements and energies within the body. Its detailed catalogue of herbs, minerals, and techniques reflected not superstition, but close observation of physiology. Turmeric, long used to treat inflammation, contains curcumin, a compound now recognized for its anti-inflammatory and antioxidant effects. Ancient Chinese medicine likewise mapped the body as a network of interactions rather than isolated organs, relying on thousands of herbs such as ginseng, licorice, and ephedra. Their combined formulas anticipated the synergistic principles that modern pharmacology still explores. Across these regions, the same plants often reappear under different names: garlic for immunity, opium for pain, willow for fever. The convergence suggests not coincidence but shared observation. Independent civilizations arrived at similar conclusions because biology itself offered limited but reliable solutions. The living world provided patterns, and human reasoning connected them. These early medicines were more than mixtures of plants. They embodied an understanding that healing involves balance between warmth and coolness, dryness and moisture, stimulation and calm. Though framed in symbolic language, these ideas mirror the homeostasis that modern physiology describes. Every culture found its own metaphor for equilibrium because the body itself demanded it. The role of the healer evolved alongside this growing complexity. In some societies, medicine intertwined with spirituality, in others with statecraft and trade. Apothecaries became respected figures who combined botanical skill with moral duty. They measured by the weight of seeds, mixed powders under the sun, and learned how preparation could alter potency. What mattered most was reproducibility, doing the same thing and achieving the same relief. That pursuit of consistency marked the first step toward scientific validation. Ancient pharmacology was empirical long before the word existed. Observation, classification, and refinement formed its core methods. Remedies that worked were recorded and transmitted. Those that failed were forgotten. Theories of humors or energies provided frameworks for thinking, but the practice itself remained rooted in evidence, the outcome experienced by patients. In this way, medicine became humanity's first long-term experiment, sustained across centuries and continents. Modern science honors these traditions, even when it reinterprets them. Many of today's drugs descend directly from these early recipes. The logic of testing, standardizing, and improving medicine began in those ancient markets and temples. Beneath layers of ritual lay genuine curiosity and disciplined repetition, the scientific spirit before its formal name. As you settle into rest, consider that each pill in a pharmacy shelf carries echoes of those first inscriptions pressed into clay, those scrolls rolled and tied in papyrus. Every capsule and tablet is part of a lineage of learning that began when people first asked, "How can nature's pain become our relief?" When the thinkers of ancient Greece turned their attention to the human body, a quiet revolution began. Healing, once cloaked in ritual and divine explanation, started to take on a language of observation and reason. The Greeks believed that understanding nature required neither prophecy nor miracle, only attention. The same attention they applied to stars, seas, and geometry. Out of that clarity grew the foundation of modern medicine. Hippocrates of Kos, often called the father of medicine, looked at illness not as punishment from gods but as an imbalance within natural systems. He urged healers to study the patient's environment, habits, and emotions before prescribing treatment. His principle, "do no harm," reflected an ethical shift. Healing became a disciplined craft grounded in cause and effect. Observation replaced superstition, moderation replaced magic. A fever was not a curse but a symptom of the body's attempt to restore equilibrium. The Greek physicians did not separate medicine from philosophy. They saw health as harmony, a balance of forces within the body and between the body and its surroundings. The theory of the four humours, blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, may sound primitive today, yet it captured a truth. Stability in living systems depends on balance, and disruption causes disease. While modern biology measures enzymes and hormones rather than humours, the underlying idea remains the same. Theophrastus, a student of Aristotle, took this reasoning into the realm of plants. His Historia Plantarum described the structures, habitats, and medicinal uses of over 500 species. He studied not only what healed, but why, noticing that flavor, color, and aroma hinted at a plant's internal chemistry. Theophrastus's writings were copied and studied for centuries, forming the backbone of botany and pharmacognosy. In his methodical attention to pattern, we see the birth of classification, the same intellectual thread that leads to Linnaeus and modern taxonomy. Greek medicine emphasized careful documentation. Healers recorded symptoms, treatments, and outcomes, comparing cases over time. This was the embryo of the case study, the forerunner of the clinical record. They understood that to know a disease, one must watch it, describe it, and learn from its course. In that discipline lay the first hint of medical science, systematic observation guided by compassion. Hospitals in the Greek world were simple but revolutionary. In the temples of Asclepius, patients slept in quiet halls where dreams were considered part of diagnosis. Priests and healers combined observation with ritual, tending to wounds, preparing herbal mixtures, and writing inscriptions of cures on marble slabs. These sanctuaries were both spiritual and empirical, bridging two worlds. Out of them emerged a recognition that healing required both knowledge and care, intellect joined to empathy. Greek influence spread through the conquests of Alexander and the later expansion of Rome, embedding the idea that medicine could be studied and taught. Libraries in Alexandria gathered treatises on anatomy, surgery, and pharmacology. Scholars began to separate active principles from mere superstition. Even though the tools were rudimentary, no microscopes, no sterilization, the mindset was transformative. The body was a system that could be studied rationally, and nature was a teacher that revealed its laws through patient observation. This rational spirit shaped not only medicine but ethics. Greek physicians were bound by oath to secrecy, honesty, and humility before the limits of their art. They recognized that healing was an uncertain practice that demanded both courage and restraint. That humility remains a cornerstone of science. The understanding that nature always knows more than we do, and that learning begins where certainty ends. The influence of Greek medicine extended far beyond its own time. Centuries later, during the Renaissance, scholars would rediscover these texts, and find in them the roots of experimental thinking. But even in their own era, the Greeks accomplished something timeless. They made healing a dialogue between the mind and nature. If you listen carefully tonight, you might feel that same balance within you, the steady pulse of a system constantly correcting, aligning, and renewing. The Greeks gave that process a language, but the wisdom itself is older than any civilization. It is the logic of life striving for harmony, the rhythm that continues quietly inside you as you drift towards sleep. When the ancient world fractured and empires faded, much of its scientific light dimmed. Yet within the quiet walls of monasteries and across the libraries of Islamic scholars, the knowledge of healing was preserved, translated, and transformed. The Middle Ages were not only an age of faith but of resilience, an era in which the continuity of medicine depended on those who refused to let memory die. In Europe, monks tended physic gardens enclosed by stone walls. These gardens were both pharmacy and classroom, each plant labeled and observed through the seasons. They grew sage for digestion, mint for the breath, comfrey for broken bones, and lavender for calm. Beneath candlelight, monks copied texts by hand, including those of Hippocrates, Galen, and Theophrastus. The illuminated manuscripts that survive today are not just works of devotion but archives of chemistry, pigments, and ink-preserving formulas that bridged 1,000 years. Meanwhile, in the Islamic world, medicine entered a new golden age. Scholars such as Al-Razi and Ibn Sina, known in Europe as Avicenna, expanded on Greek and Persian knowledge, refining it through experimentation. Avicenna's canon of medicine became a standard reference across continents for centuries. It categorized diseases, described contagious infections, and emphasized observation before treatment. Hospitals in Baghdad and Cairo employed physicians, pharmacists, and librarians, an ecosystem of learning that prefigured the modern medical institution. Apothecaries emerged as artisans of healing. Their shops were part laboratory, part market, the air thick with the scent of drying herbs and ground minerals. Mortars and pestles lined the shelves beside glass jars of powders and tinctures. Apprentices learned to weigh, grind, and mix with precision, to recognize the difference between a true ingredient and a dangerous substitute. The apothecary's mortar was the descendant of the healer's stone bowl and the ancestor of the chemist's beaker. Within it, nature's matter met human intention. Trade routes turned the world into a web of medicinal exchange. From Asia came spices and roots, cinnamon, ginger, and cardamom, valued not only for flavor but for their antimicrobial and digestive properties. From the Middle East came camphor and myrrh, from Africa, aloe and senna. These goods were as prized as gold, for they promised health in a time when illness carried deep fear. The pharmacy shelves of Venice or Damascus mirrored the biodiversity of half the planet. Science advanced in quiet increments. Distillation, borrowed from alchemy, allowed healers to extract essential oils and concentrated essences. Alcohol became a solvent for capturing a plant's active compounds. Though the language of alchemy spoke of spirits and transformations, its experiments revealed physical truths. Heat changes chemistry, separation yields purity, and reactions obey rules. Out of mystical pursuit grew the discipline of analytical chemistry. Knowledge crossed languages as well as borders. Arabic texts were translated into Latin, studied in European universities, and later printed as books once movable type arrived. What had been secret craft became shared reference. Universities like Salerno and Montpellier trained generations of physicians who blended empirical practice with inherited theory. The apothecary and the scholar began to work side by side, their collaboration foreshadowing the alliance between pharmacist and researcher that defines modern medicine. The Middle Ages also witnessed the first organized regulations of drugs. Cities required apothecaries to follow standards of purity and measure, early versions of quality control. These laws acknowledged that health depended on trust between healer and patient. It was an age of uncertainty, yet within its constraints, precision was born. Behind monastery walls and market stalls, the continuity of knowledge endured. Even when plague swept through cities and fear eclipsed reason, the apothecary's door remained open. Nature's medicines, ground by hand and mixed by intuition, offered hope. They did not always cure, but they reminded humanity that the world itself contained care. So as you lie in the quiet of night, imagine those gardens behind stone walls, leaves glistening after rain, the slow scent of mint rising with the mist. The same molecules that once filled those small courtyards drift through your room now, unchanged in their essence. Healing has always been a partnership between patience and persistence, and both were learned in that long medieval dusk where knowledge refused to fade. Throughout history, healers understood that sleep was itself a medicine. Long before modern science traced the hormones and neurotransmitters that govern rest, people sought plants that could ease the transition from wakefulness to renewal. To fall asleep was to trust the body's inner healer, and nature offered gentle allies to guide that descent. Valerian was among the oldest of those companions. The Greeks and Romans steeped its roots in wine to calm trembling nerves and quiet racing hearts. Its earthy scent, sharp to some and sweet to others, carries molecules called valerianic acids, compounds that bind to receptors in the brain's inhibitory network. These receptors, known today as GABA receptors, act like molecular brakes, slowing neural firing and reducing anxiety. Centuries of trial and error led healers to the same pathways neuroscientists would later map under the microscope. Chamomile, the small white flower with a scent of apple and hay, became the drink of peace across continents. Its active compound, apigenin, gently modulates the same calming circuits as valerian but without sedation. A warm cup before bed relaxes smooth muscles, eases digestion, and signals the nervous system that the day is closing. For many cultures, the ritual mattered as much as the chemistry. To brew, sip, and breathe in the steam was to rehearse tranquility. Lavender's story winds through monasteries, apothecaries, and modern aromatherapy. Its oils contain linalool and linolyl acetate, molecules proven to slow heart rate and lower blood pressure through the parasympathetic system. In hospitals today, the same scent diffused into rooms reduces agitation in patients, a reminder that comfort and healing share a sensory language older than science itself. Passion flower, skullcap, hops, and lemon balm each entered the pharmacological lexicon as natural sedatives. They differ in potency but share a purpose, restoring rhythm to a body that has lost its balance between alertness and surrender. Their diversity shows that nature offers not one doorway to rest but many. Every plant, through evolution's long chemistry, carries the memory of adaptation, compounds crafted to deter predators or survive stress. When we ingest them, their calming properties resonate with our own mechanisms of restoration. Modern pharmacology has tried to isolate and amplify these effects. Synthetic sleep aids often target the same receptors, achieving power at the cost of subtlety. Yet even in their precision, they imitate what nature has long accomplished through moderation. The lesson endures. Gentleness can be potent when aligned with biology rather than imposed upon it. Sleep itself remains one of nature's most intricate medicines. During the first hours of rest, growth hormone repairs tissues and the immune system heightens its vigilance. Later cycles consolidate memory, clearing metabolic waste from the brain. The chemistry of valerian or chamomile only nudges open the door. The true healer is the cascade of molecular events that follow once the body enters its nightly laboratory. In the quiet of medieval cells or rural kitchens, people may not have known the words neurotransmitter or hormone, But they understood the pattern. Rest follows calm, and calm follows ritual. A plant steeped in water, a slow breath, a moment of stillness. Each acted as a signal to the nervous system, a biological whisper that the danger had passed. Even now, surrounded by electric light and constant motion, the same principle applies. The human body remains an ancient organism, listening for cues that it is safe to rest. When the scent of lavender fills a room, or the taste of chamomile touches the tongue, those molecular messages reach deep pathways of memory that no evolution has erased. So as you close your eyes tonight, think of those simple remedies not as relics of superstition but as chemistry in harmony with life. The garden that once grew in monastery courtyards still lives in the small rituals we keep before sleep. The body recognizes what the mind forgets. To heal, it must first be allowed to rest. When ships began to cross oceans and empires expanded their reach, the exchange of medicines became as transformative as the exchange of goods. What had once been the guarded knowledge of isolated cultures suddenly began to travel in wooden crates and handwritten journals. From tropical forests to northern ports, seeds, roots, and resins flowed in every direction, reshaping the world's understanding of healing. In the 16th century, European explorers returned with tales of strange plants that cured fevers, eased pain, or colored fabrics with unearthly dyes. Behind each discovery was often an indigenous guide, a healer who knew which bark could save and which could kill. Their wisdom, refined through centuries of observation, became part of a vast, if uneven, conversation between worlds. Some knowledge was shared freely, some was taken without credit or consent. Yet the chemistry of healing proved indifferent to politics. Molecules traveled faster than empires, carried by curiosity and survival. Among the most famous of these travelers was the bark of the cinchona tree from the Andean highlands. The Quechua people brewed it to relieve chills and fever. When Jesuit missionaries learned of its effect, they brought it to Europe, where it became known as Jesuit's bark. Inside its fibrous layers lay quinine, the compound that would later save millions from malaria. For centuries, it allowed colonists, traders, and explorers to survive in tropical regions once deemed uninhabitable. Nature's molecule quietly shaped the borders of civilization. Spices followed similar paths, blurring the line between food and medicine. Clove, cinnamon, nutmeg, and pepper were prized not only for flavor but for their ability to preserve and protect. Their essential oils contain eugenol and cinnamaldehyde, powerful antimicrobial agents that slow the growth of bacteria and fungi. In a world without refrigeration, these molecules were the difference between health and sickness. Trade in spices drove exploration, mapping coastlines and fueling empires, yet at its heart lay chemistry, the simple interaction between plant defense and human need. The botanical gardens of Europe became living museums of global biodiversity. Every new expedition added to the collection: cacao from the Americas, ginseng from Asia, aloe from Africa. Each specimen was studied, pressed, and recorded. Naturalists like Carl Linnaeus later classified these plants systematically, giving scientific names to what healers had long understood through use. Exploration turned into experimentation, and curiosity replaced conquest as the truest legacy of those voyages. But the story of this era is also one of imbalance. The same roots that spread healing also spread disease. Smallpox, measles, and influenza traveled westward, devastating populations who had no immunity. The global exchange of medicines was inseparable from the exchange of suffering. Even in its brilliance, the age of exploration revealed the paradox of progress. Every discovery carries its shadow. From a scientific perspective, this period marks the first globalization of pharmacology. Knowledge from Africa, Asia, and the Americas began to merge into a single, expanding system. European physicians learned of acupuncture, Ayurvedic herbs, and tropical tonics. Indigenous healers encountered metal instruments and distillation methods. The dialogue was rarely equal, yet it laid the groundwork for the international science that would follow. The chemistry of healing continued to circulate, reshaping how people thought about the planet itself. Earth became not just a place of wonder or conquest, but a vast organism whose tissues and fluids, forests, oceans, and soils contained medicine. The explorer's map evolved into a pharmacological atlas, each region offering its unique molecular voice. As the day's thoughts begin to slow, you might imagine one of those old wooden ships adrift on a starlit sea, its cargo hold filled with roots and seeds. Every crate carries the possibility of relief for someone, somewhere, the quiet chemistry of compassion moving across the water. The winds that guided those journeys still move through our atmosphere, carrying pollen, spores, and scents across continents. In their invisible motion, the exchange continues. Healing has always been global, long before we had a word for it. By the dawn of the modern age, curiosity about nature's healing powers had become increasingly precise. The same botanical gardens that once collected plants for curiosity now served as laboratories of dissection and analysis. Healers no longer wanted to know only what worked, they wanted to know why. The age of chemistry was beginning, and with it came the ability to see medicine not as mystery, but as structure. The roots of this revolution lay in the art of separation. Apothecaries had long boiled, crushed, and steeped plants, extracting their essences through water, oil, or alcohol. But in the 18th and 19th centuries, scientists began isolating individual molecules, the invisible actors behind the visible effect. The crude mixtures that once filled glass jars were replaced by crystals, powders, and defined compounds. For the first time in history, medicine could be measured in milligrams instead of handfuls. One of the first breakthroughs came when German chemist Friedrich Serturner succeeded in extracting a pure substance from the opium poppy. He named it morphine, after the god of dreams, because it lulled pain into silence. His work revealed a truth that reshaped pharmacology. Within every plant lay hidden architecture, and once isolated, a molecule could be studied, replicated, and even improved. This marked the beginning of the chemical era, the transformation of healing from craft to science. Chemists soon realized that the healing power of plants followed recognizable patterns. Compounds with nitrogen, often bitter to taste, tended to affect the nervous system. Those without, such as terpenes and glycosides, influenced metabolism and inflammation. The language of taste and color slowly gave way to formulas and molecular diagrams. The world that once spoke in fragrance and flavor now revealed itself in bonds and rings. The apothecary's mortar became the chemist's flask, and the intuition of the healer merged with the precision of the laboratory. With purification came both clarity and danger. Concentration magnified potency, turning mild herbal infusions into powerful drugs. Dosage became the dividing line between remedy and poison. For centuries, healers relied on the body's tolerance to dilute mixtures. Now, a few grains too many could cause harm. The newfound power demanded discipline, and out of that discipline grew pharmacology, the study of how molecules move through the body, how they bind, react, and transform. Advances in distillation and crystallization revealed nature's deep logic. From bark, chemists extracted quinine; from coffee beans, caffeine; from tobacco leaves, nicotine. Each discovery was like deciphering another letter in the alphabet of life. These molecules told stories about the organisms that made them: quinine as a defense against insects, caffeine as a stimulant to protect seedlings, nicotine as a deterrent to herbivores. The chemistry of survival turned out to be the chemistry of healing. The scientific revolution also brought new tools for analysis: balances that could weigh to the milligram, thermometers to control reaction heat, and glass apparatuses that allowed chemists to see transformation unfold. The laboratory became an extension of nature's processes, a controlled environment where change could be observed in real time. Within those beakers and burners, the ancient dream of understanding life through its materials began to come true. Yet, even as science gained mastery, its best discoveries still traced their roots to the earth. The great chemists understood that they were not inventors, but interpreters. They took what evolution had written over millions of years and translated it into human language. Nature remained the teacher, the master chemist that had long ago perfected the art of molecular balance. As night deepens, imagine the faint clink of glass, the soft flame beneath a flask, and the scent of distilled plant oils drifting through an early laboratory. Each sound and fragrance marks a moment in which curiosity turned to clarity, when healing crossed the threshold from tradition to testable truth. The world had begun to see its own reflection in the mirror of chemistry, and found that the design of nature was the design of life itself. In the humid highlands of the Andes, long before the word quinine existed, local healers knew a secret hidden in the bark of a tall, graceful tree. Its rough surface carried bitterness so strong it puckered the mouth, yet inside that bitterness lay salvation. When crushed, steeped, and drunk, the infusion could quiet shivering and break fever. For centuries, the Quechua and other indigenous peoples used it to treat the chills that swept through valleys after dusk. They called it the tree of fever. To them it was not chemistry, but relationship, a conversation with the forest. When Jesuit missionaries arrived in the 17th century, they witnessed its effect firsthand. A drink prepared from this bark cured an ailing countess in Lima, and word of her recovery traveled across the ocean. Soon, powdered Jesuits' bark became one of Europe's most sought-after medicines. Carried in barrels and bundles, it crossed continents, saving lives while stirring debate. Some called it divine providence. Others distrusted its foreign origin. Yet behind those human interpretations lay a single molecule, quinine, an alkaloid evolved by the cinchona tree to defend itself against insects. The chemical structure of quinine allows it to disrupt the life cycle of the Plasmodium parasite that causes malaria. Once ingested, the molecule infiltrates red blood cells, interfering with the parasite's ability to digest hemoglobin. What began as a defensive mechanism for a tree became humanity's weapon against one of its oldest enemies. For centuries, malaria had dictated where humans could live. Its fevers haunted armies, halted trade routes, and claimed emperors. Quinine changed that geography. By the 19th century, botanists and chemists were studying the cinchona tree with almost religious devotion. Expeditions ventured into South America to find new species with the highest concentration of alkaloid. Seeds were smuggled out of Peru and cultivated in Asia, establishing vast plantations in Java and India. This global spread of a single tree was both triumph and tragedy. Triumph because it brought relief to millions. Tragedy because it mirrored the colonial hunger for control over nature's wealth. Still, the tree's medicine transcended politics. Malaria did not respect borders, and neither did the will to cure it. Quinine's influence reached beyond medicine. It shaped settlement patterns, enabled construction of canals and railways in tropical zones, and allowed explorers to survive regions once deemed deadly. Entire economies depended on it. Yet nature had its limits. Overharvesting threatened the tree, and the molecule's bitter taste made it difficult to administer. Chemists sought ways to reproduce it synthetically, a challenge that took more than a century to achieve. When the structure was finally decoded, it confirmed what nature had demonstrated all along. Molecular complexity is both elegance and resilience. The story of quinine is a study in humility. A single molecule from an obscure tree altered human history more profoundly than any invention of its age. Its legacy continues today, in derivatives like chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine, medicines that trace their lineage back to the Andean forests. Quinine also gave birth to a cultural symbol, tonic water. British officers in India dissolved quinine in carbonated water and sweetened it to make it more palatable. Thus, the evening gin and tonic began as a health precaution, a civilized ritual masking the memory of fever and survival. Modern scientists still look to that story for guidance. The cinchona tree reminds us that every forest holds untested possibilities, that the boundary between poison and cure is a matter of concentration and understanding. It also stands as a moral lesson. Gratitude must accompany discovery. Tonight, as your breath steadies and your heartbeat slows, imagine the soft rustle of Andean leaves, the scent of damp soil, the quiet chemistry within bark and vein. The molecule that once traveled the world now exists in every drop of tonic, every history of global health, every human cell protected by its descendants. From tree to test tube, from fever to healing, quinine remains proof that nature writes its remedies long before we learn to read them. The story of morphine begins in the quiet fields of the poppy Papaver somniferum, a plant whose delicate petals conceal one of the most powerful substances ever discovered by humankind. For thousands of years, people harvested its milky latex for relief from pain and for journeys into sleep. In Mesopotamian tablets, it was called the plant of joy. To ancient healers, its ability to numb suffering seemed almost divine. Yet within that gift lay the seed of dependence, for nature's generosity often comes with warnings written in chemistry. The opium poppy produces a family of alkaloids, morphine, codeine, thebaine, papaverine, molecules evolved not to help humans but to protect the plant from insects and grazing animals. These compounds interact with the same receptors in the human nervous system that regulate pain and pleasure. Morphine, the most potent of them, binds to mu-opioid receptors in the brain and spinal cord, mimicking natural endorphins. The result is a deep, encompassing calm. Pain fades, breathing slows, and awareness narrows to a tranquil stillness. It is the chemistry of mercy, but also of surrender. In the early 19th century, German pharmacist Friedrich Serturner isolated morphine as a pure crystalline substance, the first alkaloid ever extracted from a plant. He named it after Morpheus, the Greek god of dreams, believing he had found a universal balm. For the first time, pain could be controlled with precision rather than guesswork. Morphine's introduction to medicine revolutionized surgery and childbirth. Soldiers carried it into battlefields. Hospitals stocked it for the gravely ill. The molecule that had once lived quietly in the garden became the cornerstone of modern anesthesia and palliative care. Yet every molecule has two faces. Morphine's ability to quiet pain is inseparable from its capacity to create euphoria. The same receptors that still the body also teach it to crave repetition. Over time, tolerance develops. The brain adapts, demanding more to achieve the same relief. Dependence follows. What begins as comfort can evolve into captivity. This dual nature, healer and destroyer, relief and ruin, is what makes morphine one of nature's most haunting gifts. Science learned much from that paradox. The study of morphine revealed how chemical keys fit biological locks, how specific structures in molecules determine their binding power. It laid the foundation for medicinal chemistry and receptor theory. By analyzing morphine's effects, scientists uncovered the body's own system of opioids, endorphins, enkephalins, and dynorphins, natural painkillers produced during exercise, laughter, and love. The discovery turned a plant's secret into a mirror reflecting our own biology. Morphine's influence extended beyond medicine into culture and ethics. Its misuse in the 19th century led to addiction epidemics that forced society to confront the line between healing and indulgence. Laws were written, clinics established, and the concept of drug regulation was born. The molecule taught humanity that every cure must carry accountability, that power without respect leads back to harm. In the laboratory, chemists sought safer derivatives. Codeine offered milder effects. Heroin, initially created as a non-addictive substitute, proved far worse. Later generations developed synthetic opioids with controlled potency, guided by the molecular insights morphine had revealed. Even now, in hospitals across the world, morphine remains essential, the standard by which all other pain relievers are measured. It continues to ease the suffering of patients in terminal care, restoring dignity to moments where comfort matters more than cure. When you consider this story tonight, let it remind you that nature does not divide its chemistry into good and evil. It creates possibilities, and meaning arises from how we use them. The poppy's gift is neither curse nor blessing, but an invitation to responsibility. As your thoughts slow, imagine a moonlit field of pale flowers, their heads bowing gently in the night breeze. Each bloom holds the memory of thousands of years of healing and warning intertwined. The same molecules that ease pain have taught humanity humility. In their quiet potency lies the truth of medicine itself, that every remedy is also a lesson in balance. Long before laboratories refined its chemistry, the gentle medicine in willow bark was already known to ancient civilizations. Along riverbanks and wet meadows, healers stripped the pliant bark of the willow tree to brew teas that cooled fever and soothed aching joints. The Egyptians recorded its use, Hippocrates prescribed it for pain, and indigenous peoples across North America turned to it for relief after injury. For centuries, the same pattern repeated in different languages and lands. A bitter taste, a calming effect, and the quiet disappearance of pain. What none of these healers could see was that within the pale inner bark lay a compound called salicin. When consumed, salicin is metabolized into salicylic acid, a molecule capable of inhibiting the enzymes that produce prostaglandins, the messengers of inflammation and pain. The body's signal to hurt itself in protection becomes moderated, allowing recovery without the fever's distress. Nature, in essence, had already invented an anti-inflammatory drug. Humans merely learned to recognize and refine it. By the 19th century, chemists began isolating the active compound more precisely. They extracted, purified, and measured, transforming the healer's decoction into reproducible medicine. Yet salicylic acid, though effective, proved harsh on the stomach. The search for a gentler form led to a turning point in 1899 when Felix Hoffmann, working at Bayer, synthesized acetyl salicylic acid, aspirin. By modifying the molecule slightly, he reduced its irritant effects while preserving its power. It was the birth of one of the most widely used medicines in human history, still rooted in the chemistry of a simple tree. Aspirin became a bridge between herbalism and modern pharmacology. For the first time, a natural remedy had been scientifically decoded, standardized, and mass-produced without losing its origin. It was the first truly global drug, found in medicine cabinets from Cairo to New York, used for everything from headaches to heart attacks. Each tablet carries a lineage that begins in willow bark, connecting ancient riverbank brews to modern clinical precision. Its success also marked a philosophical shift. Nature was no longer seen as merely a source of ingredients, but as a guide to structure. Scientists realized that by studying natural molecules, they could create improved versions, safer, more targeted, longer lasting. The molecular alphabet of plants and microbes became the foundation of pharmaceutical design. Aspirin was not the end of herbal medicine, it was its translation into universal language. Modern research continues to uncover the subtleties of aspirin's effects. Beyond pain relief, it influences blood platelets, reducing the risk of clot formation. It moderates inflammation in ways that protect heart and brain function. Even after a century, the molecule continues to surprise researchers, proving that simplicity can hold endless complexity. Yet, for all its sophistication, the story of aspirin remains a reminder of humility. It began not with machines but with observation, with a person tasting bitterness and deciding that healing might hide within discomfort. That pattern of curiosity continues in every new discovery, the willingness to look where others see only ordinary bark or leaf. If you listen tonight, you might imagine the slow flow of sap beneath the willow's bark, the subtle chemistry moving through fibers that both nourish and protect. Those same pathways inspired a medicine that has eased billions of lives. The tree does not know what gift it gives, yet it gives nonetheless. Its molecules follow their logic of survival. Our understanding transforms them into compassion. Let that thought settle as you rest. Somewhere, a river bends around a stand of willows, their branches trailing in quiet water. The same compounds that calm your pulse tonight whisper through their stems. Every breath you take is part of that same exchange, the long conversation between body and earth, chemistry and care. As twilight deepens, the mind begins to drift toward its nightly restoration. For thousands of years, people have turned to nature for help in crossing that threshold, the gentle transition from wakefulness to sleep. While modern pharmacology can now map the circuits of this process, the ancient partnership between plants and the human nervous system remains one of the most elegant examples of shared biology. Inside the brain, millions of neurons communicate through bursts of electricity and waves of chemistry. Among their most important mediators is a neurotransmitter called gamma-aminobutyric acid, or GABA. Its role is simple yet profound. It slows activity, allowing the brain to rest, reset, and repair. Many natural sedatives work by subtly enhancing this system, helping the body's own signals for calm gain strength. Valerian root, long used as an herbal sleep aid, contains compounds that bind to GABA receptors, increasing their natural inhibition. It quiets the overactive circuits that keep thoughts spinning late into the night. Unlike synthetic drugs that force sedation, valerian simply amplifies the body's existing rhythm of rest. It does not impose sleep, it invites it. Other plants follow the same principle through different molecular paths. Hops, known mainly from brewing, contain methylbutanol, a compound that reduces neural excitation. Lemon balm's essential oils modulate enzymes that degrade GABA, prolonging its soothing presence. Passion flower acts on the same system while easing the stress hormones that interfere with rest. These are not heavy instruments but subtle notes in a symphony that the body already conducts every night. Science has confirmed much of what intuition once guided. Imaging studies show that mild sedative herbs reduce activity in regions linked to alertness and anxiety, such as the amygdala and hypothalamus. Electroencephalograms record slower brain waves after valerian or chamomile tea, closely resembling the patterns that precede natural sleep. The chemistry of these plants mirrors the brain's own language, molecules shaped through evolution to fit the locks of our neurobiology. The rhythm of sleep itself follows intricate timing. As melatonin levels rise with darkness, neurons release less stimulating neurotransmitters. Heart rate and body temperature fall, preparing tissues for maintenance and repair. In this state of lowered demand, even small adjustments from herbal molecules can make a noticeable difference. They do not override the system, they fine-tune it. The elegance of natural sedatives lies in their harmony with biology rather than their domination of it. Yet every tradition also knew the ritual mattered as much as the remedy. A cup of tea at the same hour each night, a dimming of lamps, the scent of herbs steeping in water. These cues teach the nervous system when to let go. Neurochemistry and behavior intertwine. The body learns through repetition, associating the aroma of chamomile or lavender with safety and stillness. The molecules act not alone, but as part of a pattern that includes expectation, breath, and trust. Modern sleep medicine sometimes forgets that the goal is not unconsciousness but restoration. True rest involves balance, the alternation of deep and light stages, the repair of cells, the pruning of neural connections, the quiet storage of memory. Natural sedatives play their part not by overpowering these processes but by allowing them to unfold smoothly. As you listen now, the same chemistry that governs every living creature is at work within you. The slow cascade of GABA release, the rise of melatonin, the gentle lowering of blood pressure, these are molecular lullabies written by evolution. The herbs once gathered by firelight are companions in that process, reminders that calm is not something we take, but something we remember. Let your breath slow. The science of sleep is already happening inside you, precise, patient, and older than words. Each inhale carries oxygen to the cells, repairing what the day consumed. Each exhale releases the weight of thought. The molecules that once drifted from fields of valerian or groves of lemon balm now echo in your own biochemistry. In their quiet cooperation, body and nature meet again, keeping the oldest promise of all, that healing begins in rest. At the beginning of the 20th century, medicine faced its greatest paradox. Physicians had learned to relieve pain, reduce fever, and ease sleep, but they remained powerless against infection. A single cut could turn fatal, childbirth was perilous, and surgery was a gamble with invisible organisms that no one could control. Nature had provided countless remedies for symptoms, yet the true enemy, the microscopic world, remained beyond reach. The answer, as always, was hidden in plain sight. In 1928, Alexander Fleming returned from a brief holiday to find that one of his petri dishes had been contaminated by a mold. Around it, the colonies of Staphylococcus bacteria had dissolved, leaving a clear halo of destruction. Fleming recognized that the mold, later identified as Penicillium notatum, was releasing a substance lethal to bacteria but harmless to animal cells. He named it penicillin. A mistake of housekeeping had become a milestone in history. Though Fleming's discovery was the spark, it took years before that spark ignited. Other scientists, among them Howard Florey, Ernst Chain, and Norman Heatley, developed methods to extract and purify the active compound. They learned that penicillin interferes with bacterial cell wall synthesis, preventing the microbes from dividing. The same structure that protected the bacteria became its vulnerability. What nature had designed for defense among microbes became humanity's weapon for healing. The impact was immediate and astonishing. Infections that once carried a death sentence, pneumonia, sepsis, wound infections, began to yield. During the Second World War, mass production of penicillin saved thousands of soldiers. Hospitals that had once been places of slow decline turned into spaces of recovery. The balance between humans and bacteria, tilted for millennia, suddenly shifted. Nature, it seemed, had been making antibiotics all along. Penicillin was only the beginning. Soil scientists soon discovered that fungi and bacteria were locked in constant chemical warfare, producing compounds to outcompete one another. Streptomyces species yielded streptomycin, tetracycline, and erythromycin. Each molecule represented an evolved strategy for survival, sophisticated toxins fine-tuned through evolution. Human pharmacology merely joined that ancient conflict, learning to borrow one species' defense to protect another. This revelation reframed medicine. The microbe was no longer only a threat, it was also a teacher. The very organisms that caused disease contained the keys to curing it. The world beneath our feet became a library of molecular wisdom. From rotting fruit to damp soil, from ocean sediment to rainforest floor, nature whispered chemical solutions to challenges we had only begun to understand. The antibiotic revolution transformed not just health but the way people lived. Life expectancy rose dramatically, routine surgeries became safe, childhood infections ceased to be sentences of grief. The concept of infection control entered every hospital. The microscope had become both oracle and ally. Yet the lesson of balance returned once more. As antibiotics spread, bacteria adapted. Resistance emerged as a natural countermeasure. Within decades, strains of once treatable diseases learned to survive the very drugs designed to destroy them. The arms race that had shaped the microbial world for billions of years now included us. The triumph of penicillin carried within it the same warning that accompanies every discovery: no solution is permanent, only provisional. Still, the story of antibiotics remains one of the purest examples of nature's guidance. It shows that even among decay, healing potential exists. A mold feeding on forgotten bread became the foundation of modern medicine. Through it, we learned that life's smallest forms often hold the greatest powers. Powers that can harm or heal, depending on how they are used. As the night deepens, think of the quiet wars happening all around and within you. Bacteria competing, immune cells patrolling, molecules signaling peace. The balance that penicillin restored on a global scale mirrors the balance your body maintains each night. Even in rest, your immune system listens, learns, and remembers. Healing, whether in a petri dish or within your own bloodstream, follows the same law, life defending itself through knowledge. If bacteria are nature's engineers, fungi are its master chemists. They occupy a kingdom of astonishing creativity, producing molecules so diverse that modern laboratories still struggle to catalogue them all. Beneath forests, in decaying wood, and even inside the bodies of insects, fungi weave a chemical language of defense, competition, and communication. What began as survival strategy for them has become a wellspring of medicine for us. Penicillin was only the introduction to this deeper story. Fungi continued to reveal their molecular generosity. From their threads and spores came drugs that could lower cholesterol, suppress immune rejection, or even alter perception itself. Unlike plants, which build large and predictable compounds, fungi excel at subtlety. They use enzymes as sculptors, shaping carbon atoms into rings, chains, and bridges with unmatched efficiency. Each molecule is a response to an ecological pressure, a dialogue with neighboring life. Among their most extraordinary gifts is cyclosporin, discovered in a soil fungus from Norway. Before its arrival, organ transplantation was nearly impossible. The body's immune system always attacked what it perceived as foreign. Cyclosporin changed that by temporarily calming the immune response, allowing donor and recipient to coexist. Through one fungal molecule, nature taught medicine how to modulate the body's defenses rather than destroy them. Another fungal discovery reshaped the fight against heart disease. In the 1970s, scientists isolated statins from Penicillium and Aspergillus species. These compounds inhibit an enzyme involved in cholesterol synthesis, lowering blood lipid levels and preventing cardiovascular events. What the fungus used to regulate its own metabolism became a tool for managing ours. Millions of lives have since been extended by a biochemical pathway once hidden in moldy rice. Not all fungal chemistry leads to healing in the conventional sense. Some species produce alkaloids and tryptamines that profoundly alter perception. The psychoactive compounds found in psilocybe mushrooms and Claviceps purpurea, the ergot fungus of rye. Historically feared as poisons, these molecules are now being revisited in neuroscience for their potential to treat depression, addiction, and trauma. Their action on serotonin receptors reveals that even hallucination can hold a thread of healing when approached with care. Nature's experiments, however strange, often point toward balance rather than chaos. Fungi also teach sustainability. Their ability to transform waste into nutrients, to recycle matter endlessly, mirrors the closed-loop systems that modern chemistry now strives to emulate. When we study their enzymes, we learn how to design reactions that occur under gentle conditions, at room temperature, in water, without toxic byproducts. The concept of green chemistry owes much to the quiet laboratories underfoot. Every forest floor is a chemical workshop, unseen yet vital. Filaments called hyphae stretch through soil, linking plant roots in vast networks that exchange water, carbon, and information. These mycorrhizal systems not only feed ecosystems but also distribute molecules that deter pathogens. The scent of damp earth after rain, petrichor, owes part of its aroma to fungal metabolites, subtle reminders of the invisible chemists working below. To grasp their importance is to understand that fungi are not anomalies but collaborators in life's design. Without them, forests would choke on their own litter, and medicine would lose many of its most effective tools. They embody the principle that innovation often hides where decay appears. From decomposition arises invention. As you rest, imagine the quiet architecture beneath a forest floor, a web of threads glowing faintly with chemical purpose, transforming what dies into what heals. Fungi do not seek recognition, yet their molecules course through hospitals and homes alike. They whisper that creation and destruction are never opposites, only stages of the same process, renewal through chemistry, balance through change. Beneath the surface of the oceans, life operates under conditions no laboratory could easily reproduce. Enormous pressure, low light, and scarce nutrients have driven marine organisms to evolve unusual biochemical strategies for survival. The sea, covering more than 70% of the planet, is the largest and least explored laboratory of natural chemistry. Within its depths, sponges, corals, mollusks, and microbes manufacture compounds of remarkable potency, molecules that defend, paralyze, heal, and illuminate. Marine sponges were among the first oceanic organisms to reveal their medicinal secrets. Lacking shells or claws, they protect themselves with chemistry. Some of these defensive molecules, such as arabinosides discovered in Caribbean sponges, became the foundation for antiviral and anti-cancer drugs like cytarabine and vidarabine. These compounds mimic the building blocks of DNA, interrupting the replication of rapidly dividing cells. What began as the sponge's method of deterring predators evolved into one of medicine's essential strategies for combating leukemia and viral infections. Other gifts from the sea come from creatures that move rather than anchor. Cone snails, small and beautiful but deadly, produce venoms containing hundreds of distinct peptides. Each one targets a specific nerve receptor or ion channel with surgical precision. Among them is ziconotide, derived from the venom of Conus magus, now used to treat severe chronic pain when opioids fail. It acts directly on calcium channels in nerve endings, blocking pain transmission without the risks of addiction. From a hunter's weapon emerged a new form of compassion for human suffering. Corals and algae, too, create pharmacological marvels. Soft corals generate diterpenes with anti-inflammatory properties, while marine algae produce antioxidants and antivirals. Even the slime of sea hares and the pigments of starfish have yielded promising molecules. In the ocean, every color and texture hints at a chemical adaptation, a response to predators, sunlight, or infection that can inspire therapies on land. Marine microbiology has expanded this frontier even further. Bacteria that live symbiotically with sponges or sediments often carry genes for complex biosynthetic pathways. These microbes, compressed into harsh niches, manufacture compounds with structural complexity unseen in terrestrial organisms. Their chemistry has led to new antibiotics capable of overcoming resistant bacteria. The ocean, once viewed as endless and inert, now appears as a dynamic molecular ecosystem, still speaking a language we are only beginning to translate. Studying these organisms is not easy. Collecting samples requires submersibles, remote-operated arms, and the careful preservation of fragile tissues. Many marine compounds are unstable once removed from their natural environment, yet each discovery reaffirms that innovation thrives under constraint. The same pressures that sculpted coral reefs and deep-sea vents also sculpt molecules capable of extraordinary biological precision. The ethics of marine bioprospecting now demand careful stewardship. Scientists recognize that the ocean's pharmacological wealth is finite and interconnected. Over-harvesting sponges or corals could destroy entire microecosystems. New research therefore focuses on synthesizing marine molecules in laboratories or producing them through genetic engineering, allowing medicine to benefit without taking from the sea. Beyond utility, marine medicine reshapes how we perceive the planet. It reveals that life adapts chemically to every possible environment and that survival often depends on cooperation between species. The compounds of the ocean tell stories of partnership, coral and algae sharing pigments, bacteria and sponge exchanging protection, predator and prey refining balance through chemistry. These are not isolated miracles, but expressions of nature's collective intelligence. As you rest tonight, imagine the deep sea not as darkness, but as a vast blue pulse, slow and alive. Within its pressure and silence, molecules drift and collide, forming patterns that may one day save a life. The waves you hear in memory are echoes of those hidden reactions, the steady rhythm of the planet's oldest and most mysterious pharmacy. Beneath the calm surface of the ocean lies the chemistry of resilience, waiting patiently for discovery. When the tide rises and falls, it carries more than water. It carries rhythm, the same universal pattern of ebb and flow that moves through every living system. Beneath the waves, corals expand and contract, plankton drift toward light and sink again into darkness, and even the smallest marine microbes follow cycles guided by the turning earth. These ancient rhythms, set by moon and sun, mirror the oscillations that guide human rest. The chemistry of sleep and the movement of the sea are parts of the same planetary clock. Marine organisms live by light they rarely see. In the shallow reefs, corals respond to lunar brightness with synchronized spawning, releasing clouds of eggs and sperm once a month in precise coordination. This timing is controlled by genes remarkably similar to those governing human circadian cycles, molecular timers that measure day length, temperature, and light intensity. The same proteins that regulate coral reproduction are found in the cells of our eyes and brains, adjusting our sense of day and night. The rhythm of sleep, it turns out, is not human invention but a continuation of oceanic time. At the surface, the rise and fall of plankton populations follow the sun's cycle in a daily vertical migration. Billions of tiny creatures move upward at dusk and downward at dawn, creating the largest synchronized movement of biomass on Earth. This migration is driven by chemical cues that respond to changing light, the same kind of biochemical sensitivity that triggers melatonin production in our pineal glands each evening. Life, from sea to cell, sleeps in waves. The biochemistry of rest is simple in principle yet vast in consequence. As daylight fades, photoreceptors in the eye signal the brain to release melatonin, lowering body temperature and slowing metabolism. Neurons begin to fire in longer, slower bursts. During this shift, the sympathetic nervous system, responsible for alertness and action, quiets, while the parasympathetic system takes over, promoting digestion, healing, and calm. It is a transformation from movement to stillness, just as the ocean settles when the wind dies. Marine species demonstrate this balance in visible form. Some fish rest motionless within coral crevices, their metabolism reduced. Octopuses display rhythmic color changes even while they sleep, possibly mirroring the dream cycles of mammals. Sea stars still their arms and cease their slow crawl, conserving energy for the next tide. Sleep, in every habitat, is nature's rehearsal of renewal. Modern chronobiology confirms what the sea has always practiced: synchronization sustains life. Disruption of these rhythms by artificial light, irregular schedules, or stress confuses the body's internal tides. Hormones drift out of sync, affecting mood, immunity, and metabolism. To restore balance, many therapies now borrow cues from nature: light-based treatments, temperature cycles, and even recorded ocean sounds. The body recognizes these signals instinctively because they are written into its evolutionary memory. When you listen to the sound of the ocean, even recorded, even imagined, your nervous system responds. Heart rate slows, breathing deepens, and alpha brainwaves rise, a pattern identical to the threshold of sleep. The ocean's pulse becomes the body's rhythm, a reminder that calm is not learned but remembered. Let that rhythm guide you now. Imagine the slow pull of the tide receding, the sand cooling beneath your feet, the hush that follows each wave. Beneath that quiet, a billion living things drift into their own forms of rest. Their chemistry hums softly, ions shifting, enzymes pausing, membranes repairing. You are made of the same elements they are: salt, carbon, water, light. The sleep you feel arriving is not separate from them. It is the same pulse echoing through time. As you close your eyes, you join that rhythm, the planet breathing through sea and sky, the body answering its call. In this balance between stillness and motion lies the essence of life's endurance: rest as renewal, silence as strength, sleep as the ocean within. In the natural world, survival often depends on a molecule's ability to harm, yet within those same poisons lie some of medicine's most precise instruments. Evolution, working over countless generations, has turned venoms into libraries of bioactive compounds, miniature keys designed to unlock or block the body's most sensitive systems. When studied closely, these toxins reveal not only the fragility of life but also its extraordinary capacity for transformation. What once meant death can, through understanding, become relief. Venom is not chaos, it is precision. Each drop contains a cocktail of proteins and peptides engineered for a purpose: to paralyze, to thin blood, to disable nerves. These molecules are fast, specific, and effective, qualities every pharmacologist values. The Brazilian pit viper, for instance, produces a peptide that lowers blood pressure by inhibiting an enzyme in the vascular system. That discovery inspired the development of ACE inhibitors, now among the most prescribed medications for hypertension worldwide. A single snake's adaptation against prey became a lifeline for millions of hearts. Scorpions and spiders offer similar gifts. The venom of certain scorpions contains chlorotoxin, a peptide that binds selectively to glioma cells in the brain. Researchers have used this property to develop imaging agents that help surgeons see tumor margins during operations, allowing greater precision and sparing healthy tissue. In Australia, the venom of funnel web spiders, lethal to humans in its raw form, has yielded compounds that show promise in protecting neurons after stroke by preventing calcium overload. Nature's intention may be defense, but its mechanism can teach healing. Perhaps the most elegant example comes from the ocean: the cone snail, a small hunter that fires microscopic harpoons containing a venom complex of over 200 peptides. Each targets a different neural receptor. From this complexity emerged ziconotide, a synthetic version of one peptide, now used to relieve severe chronic pain without addictive properties. Injected directly into the spinal fluid, it blocks calcium channels that transmit pain signals, offering profound relief where opioids fail. The snail's slow patience, striking only once to paralyze its prey, mirrors the precision with which its chemistry now brings peace to human nerves. Venom-derived drugs extend even to cardiovascular and metabolic care. The Gila monster, a desert lizard, secretes a saliva peptide that slows digestion and modulates blood sugar. Its synthetic counterpart, exenatide, became a treatment for type 2 diabetes, enhancing insulin response while suppressing appetite. In every case, the same rule applies. Nature's strategies for survival often mirror our search for equilibrium. To turn poison into medicine, scientists must first respect its danger. Venoms are complex, their molecules unstable outside the living gland that creates them. Extraction and study require microscale techniques and bioinformatics to map sequences and structures. Each discovery begins with curiosity and ends with caution, acknowledging that power without understanding is perilous. The success of venom-based drugs proves that fear and fascination can coexist, and that humility is the first principle of discovery. The deeper lesson reaches beyond pharmacology. Venoms remind us that healing does not come only from gentleness. Some forms of recovery require confrontation with what harms us. The same chemical that stops a heartbeat can, in another context, restore it. Balance, not avoidance, is the essence of wisdom in nature's design. As night settles, imagine the intricate world behind these molecules: snakes coiled in shadow, spiders weaving silent traps, sea snails gliding through dark coral. Each creature, through its chemistry, participates in an ancient dialogue between danger and preservation. When you breathe deeply and feel your pulse slow, consider that the same biological language flows through you. The ions, receptors, and channels that decide between movement and stillness. Healing, like venom, depends on control, and in that control lies grace. Before laboratories and formal experiments, healing was an act of observation woven into daily life. Across continents, indigenous cultures developed deep pharmacological knowledge not through instruments but through relationship with land, water, and the living world around them. This field of wisdom, now known as ethnobotany, studies how people have learned to use plants for healing, nourishment, and ceremony. It reminds modern science that discovery did not begin in the laboratory, it began with listening. Every ecosystem has its healers. In the Amazon rainforest, shamans identify hundreds of medicinal plants by sight, scent, and the behavior of animals. They know which vines cure fever, which roots calm infection, which resins close wounds. These observations were not random, they were tested over generations, recorded in stories and rituals that carried both empirical and spiritual truth. The same patient experimentation that defines modern science existed in oral form, transmitted through memory rather than manuscript. In the highlands of Madagascar, villagers long used the rosy periwinkle to treat diabetes and infections. When scientists finally examined it in the 20th century, they found two powerful alkaloids, vinblastine and vincristine, now essential in chemotherapy for leukemia and lymphoma. What had been local knowledge became global salvation. Across the world, more than a quarter of modern medicines trace their origin to plants first used by indigenous peoples. Ethnobotany reveals patterns that bridge culture and chemistry. Many traditional remedies rely on combinations rather than single ingredients. A tea brewed from several plants may balance toxicity and enhance absorption, a principle modern pharmacology calls synergy. In China, India, and Africa, such combinations evolved intuitively, guided by sensory cues and experience. Science later confirmed what tradition already practiced, that the body responds to networks of compounds, not isolated molecules. The process of learning from traditional knowledge also carries ethical weight. For too long, discoveries extracted from indigenous cultures were claimed without acknowledgement or compensation. The modern concept of bioprospecting, exploring biodiversity for useful compounds, risks repeating this history unless guided by fairness. International agreements like the Nagoya Protocol now aim to ensure that communities sharing their knowledge receive recognition and benefit. Healing, after all, must include justice. What makes ethnobotanical knowledge so profound is its integration of ecology and health. Many indigenous systems see the environment not as a backdrop but as a living partner. A medicine is effective only when harvested respectfully, at the right time, under conditions that preserve balance. This ecological awareness anticipates modern sustainability, the idea that taking without replenishing eventually destroys the very resource that heals. To heal the body, one must also protect the land. Scientific ethnobotanists today walk between two worlds. They collect specimens, isolate compounds, and analyze their structures. Yet they also sit in huts and gardens, listening to elders describe the properties of leaves and resins. They recognize that chemistry is only half the story. The other half is relationship, understanding how humans perceive, respect, and cooperate with living systems. The dialogue between knowledge systems enriches both. Traditional medicine gains validation and preservation, while modern science gains perspective and humility. Ethnobotany also teaches that healing is cultural as much as chemical. A plant may relieve symptoms through its molecules, but recovery often depends on belief, ritual, and context. The calm of ceremony, the trust in a healer, the act of returning to the forest, all engage the nervous system's pathways of relaxation and immune balance. The mind's expectation becomes part of the cure, transforming psychology into physiology. As you drift toward rest, imagine an elder at dawn, walking through misted foliage, fingers brushing each leaf with familiarity. The forest is a library written in scent and color, and each page is alive. Every culture that has ever survived learned to read at least part of it. Those teachings, passed through hands and voices, remain humanity's longest-running scientific experiment. The wisdom of indigenous science is not nostalgia, it is continuity. It shows that healing begins not with ownership, but with respect, a respect that unites people, plants, and the planet in one shared rhythm of care. Nowhere on Earth is the connection between biodiversity and medicine more vivid than in the rainforest. Stretching across continents, these dense green worlds contain over half of the planet's known species, compressed into less than 7% of its surface. Every branch, vine, and droplet of water hides life forms, whose chemistry has been shaped by endless competition and cooperation. To walk through a rainforest is to move through a living pharmacy, a molecular symphony that never stops composing. The richness of these ecosystems arises from their constant struggle for balance. In the dim light beneath the canopy, plants compete fiercely for sunlight and nutrients. To survive, they evolve chemical defenses, alkaloids that deter insects, terpenes that ward off fungi, and phenols that prevent decay. Each adaptation writes a new molecular note into nature's archive. Many of the compounds that have become cornerstones of modern medicine, from anti-cancer alkaloids to potent pain relievers, originated in plants from these regions. The rainforest is not only diverse in species but in strategy, and each strategy is encoded in chemistry. For scientists, these environments represent both opportunity and urgency. In the last century, researchers exploring the Amazon, Congo, and Southeast Asian forests identified thousands of new species with pharmacological potential. Some discoveries, like the bark of the yew tree that led to the chemotherapy drug paclitaxel, or the sap of the dragon's blood tree with its wound-healing resin, have saved countless lives. Others remain only partially understood, awaiting study before the forests that hold them disappear. Each hectare lost to logging or fire may contain molecules never before encountered, possible cures erased before they can be read. Microbial life in the rainforest soil is equally vital. Bacteria and fungi compete intensely in the decomposing layers of leaf litter, producing antibiotics, enzymes, and growth regulators. These organisms are tiny chemical factories, generating compounds with structures so novel that they continually expand the limits of synthetic chemistry. Some scientists describe the rainforest floor as a library of untranscribed books, where every handful of soil holds a volume waiting to be opened. Ethnobotanists depend on indigenous knowledge to navigate this complexity. Local communities, who have lived in these environments for generations, often know which plants cure fever, stop bleeding, or repel insects. Their guidance turns exploration into collaboration. Without such knowledge, the forest's immensity would be overwhelming, an unreadable text in an unknown language. Respecting that partnership is not only ethical but essential to scientific progress. The fragility of these ecosystems underscores a profound truth. The health of humanity is bound to the health of the planet. Climate change, deforestation, and pollution not only destroy habitats but erase potential medicines before discovery. Conservation has become a medical imperative as much as an ecological one. Protecting biodiversity is, in essence, protecting future cures. Rainforest research now combines ancient practice with modern technology. Portable DNA sequencers identify species on site, and artificial intelligence models predict which molecular structures may hold therapeutic value. Laboratories cultivate cell cultures of rare plants to study their chemistry without harvesting wild populations. The same ingenuity that once explored the stars now turns inward, seeking understanding in the leaves that built the world's atmosphere. Yet even amid scientific ambition, the rainforest remains a teacher of humility. Its complexity resists full comprehension. The interdependence of species, tree and fungus, insect and flower, mirrors the interdependence of human health and environment. A single medicinal plant relies on pollinators, soil microbes, and climate stability. To preserve one is to preserve all. As night falls in the rainforest, the air fills with the hum of unseen life. Moisture rises like breath, carrying the scent of resin and decay. Under the canopy, chemistry continues, roots exchanging minerals, fungi releasing spores, leaves closing in slow rhythm. This is the heartbeat of the Earth's pharmacy, quiet yet inexhaustible. As you listen, remember that every molecule of medicine ever made is an echo of this place, a reminder that the forest does not cure us because it serves us, but because we are part of its living design. When night descends on the rainforest, it does not bring silence, it brings transformation. The air thickens with mist, and the canopy darkens into a ceiling of breathing leaves. Insects begin their songs, frogs trade calls across the undergrowth, and the forest exhales. Yet beneath that constant sound lies deep order, a rhythm that governs when flowers close, when roots draw water, and when life, unseen, repairs itself. The rainforest, for all its noise, is asleep in its own way. Its rest is not absence, but renewal. Every plant and creature in this ecosystem follows cycles synchronized to the turning of the earth. Leaves that stretch toward light by day fold inward at night, conserving moisture. Tree frogs lower their metabolism. Jaguars patrol in deliberate silence. Even microbes in the soil shift their chemistry, releasing nutrients when temperatures cool. This nightly choreography mirrors what happens inside the human body during sleep, a lowering of energy demands, a redistribution of resources, and a focus on repair. Life, whether in canopy or bloodstream, depends on the rhythm between effort and rest. Under the forest floor, roots continue their hidden work. As photosynthesis pauses, carbohydrates produced during daylight move downward, feeding fungi and bacteria that decompose fallen leaves. These microorganisms transform death into nourishment, closing the loop of renewal. The rainforest's rest, like ours, is not idle, it is activity redirected inward, invisible but essential. Our own cells behave the same way. During deep sleep, tissues repair DNA, clear toxins, and rebuild energy stores. In both forest and body, rest is preparation for life's next surge of growth. Scientists studying rainforest respiration have noticed something striking. Even without sunlight, forests continue to breathe, exchanging gases with the atmosphere through the night. Trees absorb oxygen and release carbon dioxide, mirroring the respiration of animals. This two-way exchange balances global chemistry, maintaining the very air we breathe as we sleep. Your inhalation tonight may include atoms once exhaled by a leaf thousands of kilometers away. Rest is never solitary. It is a shared process, woven through ecosystems. The chemistry of scent plays its part in this nocturnal balance. Oils from wet bark and damp soil, rich in terpenes and geosmin, rise with humidity. Inhaling them can slow the human heart rate and lower blood pressure, a measurable physiological response known as biophilia. The same compounds that protect plants from bacteria calm our nervous systems through the olfactory nerve. The forest and the body communicate without words, exchanging molecular signals of peace. To walk, or even to imagine walking, through a rainforest at night is to feel that chemistry at work. The air is warm but gentle, and every drop of dew reflects the faint light filtering through layers of leaves. Somewhere high above, orchids close their petals, conserving scent for dawn. Beneath them, moss glows faintly with bioluminescent fungi. The forest dreams in chemistry and light. For humans, this connection is more than metaphor. Research shows that exposure to natural patterns, the sound of running water, the repetition of insect calls, the soft fluctuation of light, synchronizes brain waves with frequencies associated with relaxation and early sleep. The forest's pulse, steady and predictable, aligns with the brain's need for rhythm and order. When our surroundings mirror our biology, sleep comes naturally. As your own night deepens, imagine lying beneath that canopy. The body's breathing matches the rise and fall of the forest's vapor. The same hormones that guide your sleep, melatonin, serotonin, cortisol, follow cycles that echo the shifting light above the leaves. Every breath reminds you that you are part of this grand respiration, this continuous exchange between human and earth. Let the thought settle. Nothing in nature rests completely, yet everything renews. The rainforest does not sleep in silence, it restores itself in motion. And within you, as you drift towards sleep, the same pattern unfolds. Quiet repair beneath the canopy of your own consciousness, the chemistry of life continuing its tireless work. By the turn of the 20th century, science had learned not only to isolate nature's compounds, but to redesign them. The laboratory became an extension of evolution's own workshop, imitating and improving upon the molecules discovered in forests, oceans, and soils. What began as extraction from bark and leaf matured into the art of synthesis, building complex structures atom by atom. Humanity, for the first time, could reproduce nature's designs without waiting for the slow hand of biology. The principle was simple yet revolutionary. If a molecule could be identified and its structure mapped, it could also be constructed. Chemists learned to rearrange carbon rings, add or remove oxygen groups, and alter bonds to refine a compound's strength or safety. Aspirin, morphine, and quinine all became templates for countless variations, each designed to target the body more precisely. The laboratory no longer depended on harvests or seasons. Medicine could now emerge from glassware rather than ground. This transformation marked the birth of medicinal chemistry. Through synthesis, researchers could explore not just what nature had made, but what she might have made under different conditions. They discovered that small changes, a single atom substituted here, or a new side chain attached there, could alter how a molecule behaved inside the body. By adjusting structure, they could adjust destiny, converting toxicity into therapy or fleeting relief into lasting benefit. Nature provided the blueprints. Chemistry became the architect. One of the great triumphs of this period was the semi-synthetic modification of natural drugs. Morphine, for instance, led to the development of codeine and later hydromorphone, variations that offered more controlled effects and reduced side reactions. Penicillin, fragile in its original form, was reshaped into derivatives such as amoxicillin and flucloxacillin, resistant to stomach acid and stable at room temperature. Each new generation honored the original molecule while extending its reach. These innovations also revealed the ethical responsibility that accompanies power. Synthetic chemistry could magnify healing, but it could also magnify harm. The same principles that produced life-saving drugs enabled the creation of toxic agents and addictive substances. Scientists began to realize that mastery of molecules required moral guidance as much as technical skill. The Hippocratic Oath, once a physician's personal promise, became a philosophy for science itself. Modern synthesis blurred the line between natural and artificial. In truth, there was never a boundary, only a continuum. The atoms that form a lab-made compound are no different from those in a leaf or shell. The difference lies in design, one shaped by evolution, the other by intention. Both obey the same laws of chemistry, both seek balance between stability and reactivity. To design a molecule is to participate in the same creative logic that shaped the biosphere. Technological progress made this collaboration even deeper. Spectroscopy, chromatography, and X-ray crystallography allowed chemists to visualize molecular architecture with near-perfect accuracy. Computers modeled reactions, predicting outcomes before a single drop of reagent was poured. Chemistry became a dialogue between human imagination and physical law. Each new synthesis was a conversation with nature, not imitation, but continuation. Today, nearly half of all approved drugs are derived directly or indirectly from natural compounds. Even the most advanced biotechnologies rely on pathways first drawn by living cells. Nature remains the foundation, the teacher whose lessons never end. Modern synthesis has not replaced her but translated her processes into new dialects of precision. As you rest, consider that the molecules working within your body, the enzymes, hormones, and nutrients, perform synthesis every second. They rearrange, replicate, and repair, sustaining the quiet architecture of life. Your cells are laboratories more elegant than any built by human hands, following the same rules that govern both the chemist's flask and the forest's leaf. Let that realization bring ease. The science that heals is not separate from the life it serves. Each breath, each heartbeat, each exchange of energy reflects the same unity of design. Nature's molecules, whether born in root or retort, belong to one continuous experiment, the experiment of living matter seeking balance. For thousands of years, medicine depended on what could be gathered, dried, or distilled from the world around us. A healer's power was measured by the reach of their garden or the richness of the soil. But as the limits of wild harvest became clear, as forests thinned and oceans strained, science sought a gentler way to collaborate with nature. Out of that search grew biotechnology, the art of using living systems themselves to produce medicine without destroying the sources that inspired them. Biotechnology began with a simple realization. The genes that encode a plant's healing compound or a microbe's antibiotic can be copied and expressed in another organism. Yeast, bacteria, or even cultured cells can become tiny factories, growing the same molecules once found only in rare roots or fragile corals. Instead of cutting down trees or harvesting deep-sea sponges, scientists could now coax microbes into doing the same work inside a fermenter. Life's code, once deciphered, could be reprinted responsibly. One of the earliest triumphs of this approach came with the malaria drug artemisinin. Traditionally extracted from the sweet wormwood plant, it required vast fields to meet global demand. By transferring the plant's genetic pathway into engineered yeast, researchers enabled fermentation tanks to produce artemisinin efficiently and sustainably. What once depended on harvest cycles now depended on controlled growth, medicine made not by extraction but by expression. This principle spread rapidly. Bacteria were taught to synthesize insulin identical to the human form, replacing the need for animal-sourced hormones. Engineered microbes now produce antibiotics, enzymes, vaccines, and even complex antibodies that would be impossible to extract directly from nature. In each case, biotechnology replaces scarcity with abundance, substituting the precision of molecular design for the unpredictability of harvest. The science behind it rests on recombinant DNA technology, cutting, copying, and rejoining genetic sequences like lines of text. When a gene responsible for a desired compound is inserted into a microbial genome, the cell's machinery reads it as its own instruction, building proteins or metabolites just as the original organism would. This process mirrors nature's method of evolution, but at a pace guided by understanding rather than chance. Biotechnology does not oppose nature, it accelerates her learning. The implications reach beyond medicine. Synthetic biology now designs microbes that clean pollutants, fix nitrogen for crops, or generate sustainable materials. The same methods used to make insulin also allow the creation of biodegradable plastics and lab-grown leather. Biology has become a technology platform, one that heals not only the body but the planet itself. Yet biotechnology also raises questions of ethics and control. When we replicate life's code, we assume stewardship over its possibilities. The power to design must be balanced by the humility to preserve. Every engineered organism is both a triumph and a responsibility, a reminder that all creation, natural or artificial, exists within interconnected ecosystems. Scientists have responded with strict containment protocols, ecological safeguards, and frameworks for bioethics that emphasize benefit without exploitation. Still, the wonder remains. A glass vessel filled with nutrient broth can now replace hectares of farmland or fragile coral reefs. Within it, cells divide quietly, guided by genetic blueprints written by nature and refined by human care. The line between laboratory and landscape fades. The bubbling sound of fermentation becomes the modern equivalent of the forest's rustle, the music of life turning its own code into healing. As you prepare to rest, imagine those bioreactors glowing softly in the dark, their contents alive with potential. Inside each one, billions of microscopic workers transform simple sugars into medicine. Their rhythm mirrors your own, steady, purposeful, restorative. The next era of healing will not depend on taking from the world but on learning from it, allowing life itself to sustain the cycle of care. In that sense, biotechnology is not a departure from nature, but its continuation, a quiet, luminous proof that cooperation can replace consumption. Long before laboratories discovered antibiotics or synthesized hormones, every human carried a pharmacy within. The body is not a single organism but a vast community, trillions of microbes living in quiet cooperation. Together, they form the microbiome, bacteria, fungi, and viruses that inhabit our skin, lungs, and above all, our gut. Once viewed as mere passengers or threats, these microscopic partners are now recognized as some of our most essential healers. The human microbiome weighs roughly as much as the brain and contains more genes than all of our own combined. Each species within it performs specific chemical tasks, breaking down fiber into fatty acids that feed intestinal cells, manufacturing vitamins, regulating hormones, and training immune defenses. What the liver cannot metabolize, bacteria can. What the immune system cannot recognize, they teach. We are not simply hosts to these organisms, we are shaped by them. Modern research has revealed how deeply they influence health. Certain gut bacteria produce neurotransmitters such as serotonin and gamma-aminobutyric acid, GABA, molecules that calm the nervous system and regulate mood. Others generate anti-inflammatory compounds that protect against chronic disease. Some even affect the metabolism of medicines, activating or neutralizing them before they reach the bloodstream. In every sense, the microbiome functions as an inner laboratory, performing chemical reactions that sustain life far beyond our conscious control. The relationship between human and microbe is ancient. When our ancestors first ate fermented foods, yogurt, kimchi, bread, beer, they were not only preserving nutrition but cultivating symbiosis. Fermentation mirrored what happened inside the body, extending microbial collaboration beyond the gut. The same bacteria that turn milk into yogurt also shape our digestion, immunity, and emotional balance. Healing, it seems, often begins with feeding the world within. Disruption of this community can have far-reaching effects. Diets low in fiber or high in processed sugar starve beneficial microbes, allowing less cooperative species to dominate. Antibiotics, though life-saving, can temporarily clear entire microbial ecosystems, leaving the body's chemistry unbalanced. Scientists now understand that restoring this harmony through diet, probiotics, and lifestyle is as vital as treating disease itself. Health is no longer defined solely by the absence of pathogens, but by the diversity and resilience of microbial allies. The frontier of microbiome science has begun to merge with biotechnology. Researchers are designing live biotherapeutics, custom microbial strains engineered to produce medicines inside the body. Instead of swallowing pills, patients may one day swallow living cells programmed to release anti-inflammatory molecules or insulin directly where needed. These inner pharmacies could adapt to the body's changing needs in real time, evolving with their host as naturally as any ecosystem. The philosophical implications are profound. The boundary between self and environment dissolves when we recognize that half our cells are not ours in origin. The body becomes an ecosystem rather than a fortress, a living proof that cooperation, not isolation, is the foundation of survival. In this sense, microbiome science is less about control than acceptance. It teaches that health arises from relationship, that balance depends on diversity, and that even within our own skin, we are part of nature's design. As you lie still, consider the quiet chemistry taking place inside you. Millions of bacterial cells are metabolizing nutrients, exchanging signals, repairing tissues. They do not sleep as you do, yet their rhythm sustains your rest. Each breath, each heartbeat, each slow wave of digestion continues the dialogue between human and microbe, an ancient partnership humming softly beneath awareness. Let that thought ease you. Healing does not always require motion or medicine. Sometimes it is already underway. Inside you, the same biological wisdom that shapes forests, reefs, and rivers is at work, invisible, tireless, precise. Your body and its microbes share a single goal: balance. And as the night deepens, that balance becomes your peace. Viruses occupy a strange position in the story of life. They are not truly alive, yet not entirely dead. Fragments of genetic code wrapped in protein, able to replicate only within living cells. For centuries, they were invisible enemies, spreading silently through communities, defying medicine's best attempts at control. Yet in their paradox lies one of nature's greatest lessons. Sometimes the key to protection comes from understanding the very thing that harms. The discovery of vaccines began long before the word virus existed. In the 18th century, observers noticed that milkmaids who caught the mild disease cowpox did not contract smallpox, a deadly scourge of the time. Edward Jenner tested this observation by introducing a small amount of cowpox material into a child's arm. The boy developed minor symptoms, but later proved immune to smallpox. Though crude by modern standards, the experiment revealed a profound biological truth, that the immune system could learn. Nature's smallest threat became its own antidote. The principle that followed reshaped medicine. When exposed to weakened or inactive viruses, the immune system responds as if encountering a real infection. It produces antibodies and memory cells that remain alert for years, ready to neutralize the invader if it returns. Vaccination turns fear into foresight, transforming vulnerability into resilience. It is a dialogue between body and pathogen, one that replaces panic with preparation. The scientific understanding of this process grew through the study of viral structure. Each virus carries unique surface proteins that allow it to attach to host cells. Vaccines work by presenting those same proteins, or pieces of them, without the viral genome that causes disease. The immune system rehearses its defense safely, as if training soldiers on a simulated battlefield. From the perspective of chemistry, vaccination is information transfer, data encoded in proteins and sugars, teaching the body how to recognize danger. Modern biotechnology has refined this ancient practice into precision. Messenger RNA vaccines, for example, deliver a genetic blueprint rather than the protein itself. Once inside human cells, this blueprint instructs them to produce harmless fragments of the virus, prompting immunity without infection. The approach mimics how nature itself evolves, learning from experience and passing that information forward. Within each cell, the border between biology and technology grows faint, replaced by shared logic. Viruses have also shaped evolution itself. Over half of the human genome contains remnants of ancient viral sequences, fossilized fragments that once invaded our ancestors' cells and stayed. Some of these sequences now serve useful roles, controlling gene expression, forming parts of the placenta, or guiding immune development. In a quiet way, viruses helped build the species they once threatened. Every infection, every adaptation, leaves behind traces that alter life's design. The line between destroyer and teacher is thinner than it seems. Vaccination carries both triumph and responsibility. It stands among the greatest achievements in public health, yet its success depends on trust, the collective choice to protect one another. When communities vaccinate, they form a shield that extends beyond the individual, guarding those too young or fragile to respond. This shared protection, known as herd immunity, is one of the clearest expressions of cooperation in biology. The chemistry of survival becomes an act of compassion. In the broader view, viruses remind us of balance. They are agents of change, constantly mutating, forcing life to adapt. Without them, evolution would slow. With them, it never stops. They are both threat and stimulus, the dark mirror through which immunity defines itself. In facing them, humanity learned not only to defend, but to understand that danger and discovery often arrive together. As you breathe in the stillness of night, consider how every heartbeat echoes this principle: exposure, response, adaptation. The same immune intelligence that remembers a childhood vaccine now maintains your safety as you rest. Within your bloodstream, antibodies patrol silently, molecules of memory preserving the lessons of countless encounters. The paradox of protection is complete, life strengthened by what once sought to undo it. Every medicine, every cell, and every living being begins with a single alphabet, 4 chemical letters that write the code of life. Adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine form the language of DNA, a script that shapes not only the color of a leaf or the rhythm of a heartbeat, but also the body's capacity to repair itself. Within this molecular text lies the blueprint for all healing, waiting to be read and understood. For most of history, humans could only observe nature's effects, never the instructions behind them. The discovery of DNA's double helix in the mid-20th century revealed that life's complexity arises from simplicity, just 4 bases arranged in infinite combinations. Each sequence carries directions for building proteins, enzymes, and hormones, the tools that construct and maintain living systems. These biological instruments orchestrate the chemistry of recovery, sealing wounds, neutralizing toxins, regenerating tissue. Healing is not an external event, it is a transcription of this code into action. Modern genetics turned this revelation into medicine. By decoding the DNA that governs disease, scientists learn to identify mutations responsible for inherited disorders. Gene therapy emerged from this insight, using harmless viruses as couriers to deliver corrected genes into the body's cells. For conditions once considered untreatable, certain forms of blindness, immune deficiency, or anemia, this approach offers restoration from within. The medicine does not fight symptoms, it rewrites the instructions that caused them. Understanding DNA also transformed pharmacology. The study of genetic variation explained why some people respond strongly to a drug while others do not. Pharmacogenomics, the tailoring of medication to individual genetic profiles, is now guiding treatments for cancer, heart disease, and mental health. The idea that one molecule fits all has given way to precision medicine, where therapy aligns with the unique pattern of a patient's genome. Every prescription becomes personal. But perhaps the most profound application of genetic knowledge is not correction, but comprehension. Sequencing the genomes of plants and animals reveals how evolution has refined survival. The same genes that protect Arctic fish from freezing appear, in altered form, in certain bacteria that endure drought. Human cells share large portions of DNA with yeast, fruit flies, and trees, evidence that all life builds from a shared library. This unity implies that healing, too, is universal. The body mends using principles written long before our species appeared. DNA's capacity for repair offers a lesson in resilience. Each strand endures constant damage from sunlight, chemicals, and metabolic activity, yet specialized enzymes patrol the genome, scanning for errors and stitching them closed. Every second, thousands of repairs occur inside every cell. The body's stability is not a state, but a process, an ongoing restoration that mirrors the persistence of life itself. Genetic research has also revealed that the code is not rigid but responsive. Environmental factors such as diet, stress, and sleep influence which genes are expressed or silenced through epigenetic markers. This means behavior and environment can shape biology in real time, switching certain pathways on or off. The line between nature and nurture dissolves, replaced by continuous dialogue. Healing becomes both inheritance and choice. The ethical questions raised by genetic power echo those of every era of discovery. Editing the genome through tools like CRISPR offers the promise of curing disease, but also the temptation to alter traits beyond necessity. Science now faces its own test of restraint, to use knowledge for compassion, not control. Nature's code is both instruction and warning, that mastery without wisdom risks imbalance. As night settles around you, imagine your cells glowing softly, each nucleus a library of life's instructions. Inside, enzymes uncoil DNA strands, read them, copy them, and repair them quietly, tirelessly, flawlessly. The same language that built forests and oceans hums within your own body. Every breath and heartbeat are acts of transcription, your biology reciting the poetry of survival. Healing, in its purest form, is simply the code remembering itself. When the world grows quiet and light fades from the sky, the chemistry of life changes direction. What was outward becomes inward. What was active becomes restorative. In this nightly transition, every living system, from forest to bloodstream, begins the slow work of repair. Sleep is not an escape from biology, but one of its most intricate expressions. It is the time when the body's laboratory turns fully toward maintenance, rebuilding the molecules that sustain consciousness itself. Inside the brain, neurons that fired continuously during the day now clear the byproducts of thought. The glymphatic system, a network of tiny channels surrounding brain cells, opens wider during sleep, flushing out metabolic waste through pulses of cerebrospinal fluid. Proteins and ions that accumulated with mental effort are carried away, leaving the mind chemically renewed. This cleansing is so precise that even small disruptions to sleep can alter memory, emotion, and reasoning. The mind's clarity in the morning is not abstract, it is biochemical. Elsewhere, the body's organs follow their own nocturnal rhythms. The liver synthesizes glycogen to store energy, the kidneys filter more slowly to conserve water, and the immune system intensifies its patrol. Cells release growth hormone, stimulating the repair of tissues and the production of collagen and muscle fibers. DNA repair enzymes become most active during deep sleep, patching damage from ultraviolet light or metabolic stress. Every night, the genome itself receives maintenance. Sleep is evolution's way of synchronizing restoration across trillions of cells. This state is orchestrated by precise molecular timing. As melatonin rises, body temperature drops, and cortisol declines, signaling cells to shift from consumption to conservation. Blood pressure lowers, heart rate steadies, and breathing slows. Electrical rhythms in the brain, delta waves, dominate, allowing long-range neural networks to pause and local circuits to strengthen. The oscillations of these waves are mirrored in subtle fluctuations of heart and breath, a resonance between organs that maintains internal harmony. The same rhythmic intelligence that governs tides and seasons operates within you each night. From a scientific view, sleep is both universal and diverse. Whales rest half their brains at a time to continue surfacing for air. Birds nap mid-flight. Trees alter their leaf positions as if breathing. Every organism has found a way to balance wake and rest, activity and renewal. The molecular signatures of sleep, reduced metabolic rate, cellular repair, hormonal equilibrium, appear across the tree of life. The lesson is clear. Rest is not luxury, it is law. The chemistry of sleep also deepens immunity. During the night, T cells circulate more freely, and the body's ability to recognize pathogens improves. Vaccines are even slightly more effective when given after sufficient rest, a reminder that sleep is not passive but participatory in healing. The immune system, memory, and metabolism all depend on this nightly calibration. Skipping it is like neglecting to reset the balance of an ecosystem. Yet beyond molecules and neurons, there is meaning in this rhythm. Sleep reminds us that healing requires surrender, a trust that life continues its work without conscious control. Just as the forest renews itself in darkness and the ocean redistributes its nutrients at depth, your body renews itself when you let go. The same intelligence that built stars and cells guides repair in silence. As you rest tonight, imagine the invisible symphony within you. Cells dividing, enzymes weaving, neurons syncing in quiet coordination. Every process follows patterns written in DNA and conducted by time. You are not separate from nature's night, you are its participant. Each breath draws in the oxygen made by daytime leaves, and each exhale returns carbon to feed their dawn. Sleep completes that exchange, the body giving and receiving, mending and preparing. Let the rhythm of this chemistry guide you. The day's fragments are already being gathered and made whole. The universe restores itself through you, molecule by molecule, dream by dream. Every species must protect itself, and for plants, defense is an act of chemistry. Unable to run or hide, they build their shields from molecules, layers of scent, color, bitterness, and toxin. These compounds deter insects, heal wounds, and prevent infection. Yet what plants create to defend themselves often becomes medicine for us. In understanding their strategies, humanity has learned to borrow their immunity, transforming survival chemistry into healing art. Plant defenses begin at the surface. Waxes, oils, and resins form physical barriers against invaders, but when those fail, a cascade of biochemical reactions awakens. Damaged cells release signaling molecules like jasmonic acid and salicylic acid, alerting neighboring tissues and even other plants through airborne messengers. Within minutes, genes switch on the production of protective compounds, tannins, alkaloids, flavonoids, each with distinct powers. These molecules disrupt bacterial walls, neutralize toxins, or scavenge reactive oxygen that causes decay. Every leaf is a living laboratory, synthesizing pharmaceuticals in real time. Humans discovered that many of these same molecules work in our own defense. Flavonoids from fruits and vegetables reduce inflammation and strengthen blood vessels. Polyphenols like resveratrol, found in grape skins, act as antioxidants, protecting our cells from damage similar to that faced by plant tissues. Alkaloids such as caffeine and theobromine evolved to deter insects, sharpen human alertness by stimulating neural receptors. Even our immune systems respond to plant compounds as teachers, learning from their molecular patterns to regulate inflammation and repair. This borrowed immunity extends to antibiotics and antivirals derived from plants. Artemisinin, from sweet wormwood, disrupts malaria parasites inside red blood cells. Berberine, from barberry and golden seal, interferes with bacterial enzymes. The same evolutionary arms race that forced plants to fight microbes provided humans with an arsenal of natural medicines. Our pharmacology is, in essence, an extension of plant immunity. The crosstalk between species reveals deep biochemical kinship. Many of the signaling pathways that plants use to defend themselves, such as those involving nitric oxide and reactive oxygen species, are shared by human cells. When we consume plant-derived compounds, our own systems recognize and incorporate them, strengthening antioxidant defenses and activating repair enzymes. The overlap suggests that life, at its molecular core, speaks one language of protection. Modern science continues to study this exchange. Nutrigenomics, the study of how food molecules influence gene expression, shows that certain plant compounds can switch on human genes related to detoxification and immunity. Curcumin from turmeric, for example, modulates over 100 molecular targets, from inflammatory mediators to transcription factors. Its effect is not to override our biology but to tune it, much like a key fitting perfectly into a lock already shaped by evolution. This partnership also carries a responsibility. As agriculture narrows to a few dominant crops, we risk losing thousands of plant species that may hold undiscovered defensive compounds. Each extinction erases a potential medicine, a chemical innovation refined through millions of years. Protecting biodiversity is not only an act of ecological care but an investment in future health. Nature's immune system depends on diversity, and so does ours. The idea that plants share their immunity is more than poetic. When we eat, breathe, or brew their molecules into medicine, we join an ancient chemical network that links species across time. The resilience of forests becomes part of our bloodstream. The defensive wisdom of leaves becomes our cellular strategy. Healing, at its deepest level, is cooperation. As you prepare to rest, imagine a forest after rain, droplets clinging to leaves, each glinting with unseen chemistry. Beneath that surface, every plant is busy mending microscopic wounds, strengthening itself against tomorrow's sun or storm. In your own body, Similar messages move quietly through the bloodstream, coordinating defenses, repairing damage, preparing for a new day. You and the forest share the same logic: repair, adapt, endure. The boundary between healer and healed dissolves. Only the rhythm of life remains. Life on Earth has always been conversational. Every species speaks through chemistry, signals of attraction, warning, or survival, and those signals rarely go unanswered. Over millions of years, plants, animals, fungi, and microbes have co-evolved, refining each other's defenses and dependencies. What we call medicine is often a continuation of this dialogue, an adaptation built upon ancient biochemical conversations. Humanity's discoveries do not stand outside evolution, they are part of it. The idea of coevolution explains why our bodies respond so precisely to the molecules other organisms make. The bitter alkaloids that stimulate human nerves first evolved to deter herbivores. The sugars and pigments that delight our senses began as lures for pollinators. Each adaptation shaped another in return, a molecular negotiation that bound ecosystems into balance. Our receptors, enzymes, and immune sensors are evolutionary memories of these exchanges. The human nervous system, for instance, contains receptors that recognize nicotine, caffeine, and cannabinoids, not because evolution anticipated cigarettes or coffee, but because similar molecules once flowed through the diets and environments of early species. This reciprocal refinement continues today at every scale. Bacteria evolve resistance to antibiotics, prompting scientists to design new drugs. Viruses mutate, teaching immune systems to adapt. Crops develop stronger defenses as pollinators and pests shift their behavior. Coevolution ensures that the story of medicine remains open-ended, never static. It is an arms race, but also a collaboration, a shared drive toward equilibrium. Even within our own bodies, the process unfolds. The immune system evolves dynamically, generating new antibodies each time it meets a pathogen. Over a lifetime, it builds a molecular memory that echoes the evolutionary timeline of the species itself. Your immune cells, trained by past encounters, carry an archive of the world's chemistry. They are historians of exposure, learning, and passing forward resilience. Coevolution also explains why side effects exist. A molecule designed by one organism may not fit perfectly in another's system. The caffeine that awakens humans can be toxic to certain animals. The antibiotics we use against bacteria can also harm the microbial allies in our intestines. Medicine is powerful because of shared ancestry, but imperfect because each lineage has diverged in its own way. Healing requires awareness of this tension, using nature's tools without assuming universality. On a planetary scale, coevolution shapes biodiversity itself. Flowers and bees, corals and algae, humans and their microbiomes, each partnership drives innovation in form and function. When one participant changes, the other responds, adjusting chemistry, behavior, or structure. In this interplay, novelty arises: new scents, new colors, new molecules. Evolution's creativity is not random, it is relational. The complexity of life stems from endless feedback loops of exchange. Modern medicine, though rooted in science, follows the same pattern. Researchers study how pathogens resist drugs, how tumors adapt to therapy, and how ecosystems react to human interventions. Each discovery changes the rules for the next. The laboratory becomes a miniature version of nature's experiment, guided by feedback, selection, and adaptation. Humanity's intellect is now one more participant in the global evolutionary conversation. In this light, the future of healing may depend less on invention than on listening. By studying how organisms maintain balance, how fungi recycle nutrients, how whales regulate stress, how desert plants conserve water, we uncover strategies refined over eons. Biotechnology, pharmacology, and ecology converge into a single discipline, learning from life itself. The boundary between nature's intelligence and human knowledge grows thinner each year. As night deepens, think of this conversation continuing quietly all around you. In soil, microbes adjust to temperature. In oceans, corals adapt to light. Within your body, cells repair and recalibrate. Every exchange, every adaptation, every breath is part of a dialogue older than words. You are not an observer of evolution, but a participant in its ongoing experiment. Let that awareness ease your thoughts. The same intelligence that shaped forests and stars flows through your veins. Coevolution is not just a theory of biology. It is the rhythm of existence, the unending conversation that connects every molecule of life. The next era of healing will not be defined by domination over nature, but by collaboration with it. For centuries, humanity extracted, isolated, and synthesized, believing mastery meant control. Now the frontier of medicine is shifting again, from invention to partnership. Scientists, guided by ecology and genetics, are learning to design with life instead of over it, creating therapies that cooperate with biology's own intelligence rather than override it. This philosophy, sometimes called biomimetic or nature-inspired design, studies how organisms solve the problems of survival. The immune system of sharks, stable and ancient, inspires antiviral compounds resistant to mutation. The slime molds that map food sources through chemical signaling guide algorithms for optimizing drug delivery. Even the structure of spider silk, strong, flexible, biodegradable, is influencing how molecular scaffolds for tissue repair are made. In every case, the new medicine emerges not from conquering complexity but from emulating it. Advances in computational biology and nanotechnology now make it possible to model these natural systems at atomic precision. Artificial intelligence scans the genomes of plants, fungi, and marine species, predicting which molecular structures might hold therapeutic potential. Instead of random trial and error, researchers simulate evolution digitally, exploring millions of variations in hours. This accelerates discovery while reducing environmental cost. It is nature's method, variation, and selection, applied with human speed. At the same time, regenerative medicine brings the concept of healing closer to nature's continuous renewal. Stem cells, capable of becoming any tissue, reflect the same flexibility that plants use to regrow after injury. 3D bioprinting now arranges these cells into patterns that mimic natural organs, allowing damaged tissues to be replaced rather than merely repaired. These technologies echo the principles of ecosystems: resilience through regeneration, balance through feedback. The future of medicine also includes materials that dissolve harmlessly when their work is done: biodegradable sutures, dissolving drug capsules, and implants that release their payload and vanish. Such innovations mark a quiet philosophical shift. Medicine should not linger longer than necessary. Like a seed that gives rise to a tree and then becomes soil, a therapy completes its purpose and returns to balance. Perhaps the most radical idea in natural medicine's future is personalization grounded in ecology. By mapping not just an individual's genome but also their environment, diet, microbiome, pollutants, and stressors, doctors can tailor treatments that restore harmony rather than simply target disease. Health becomes a dynamic relationship between the body and its surroundings, guided by data but shaped by empathy. The physician becomes both scientist and gardener, tending balance rather than fighting battle. These innovations still rest on the foundation that nature built. The enzymes that power synthetic biology come from microbes. The genetic codes that make editing possible belong to viruses. The molecules that calm inflammation are modeled after the chemistry of leaves. Technology does not replace nature, It translates her patterns into new forms of care. In that sense, every laboratory of the future will resemble a greenhouse as much as a factory, a place where creation and conservation merge. Ethics will define this partnership. The ability to modify life carries the duty to protect it. Engineers and biologists increasingly speak of circular medicine, a system where treatments, production, and waste all return harmlessly to the biosphere. The goal is not infinite growth, but sustainable healing. Just as forests recycle nutrients endlessly, so too should the medical sciences learn to leave no residue but health. As night settles, imagine the laboratories of the future glowing softly, not sterile spaces of separation, but gardens of light and living color. Within them, cells grow in harmony, machines hum with quiet purpose, and algorithms mimic the logic of evolution itself. Each discovery is an act of listening, each experiment a conversation with life. You, too, are part of that experiment, an organism refined by millions of years, still learning how to balance invention with reverence. The future of natural medicine does not lie in power, but in partnership. Healing will always return to its oldest truth, that to sustain life, one must work in rhythm with it. From the first bitter taste of bark to the glow of modern laboratories, the story of medicine has been one long conversation between humanity and nature. Across centuries and continents, through discovery and rediscovery, every cure has carried the same quiet truth, that healing is not something we impose upon the world, but something we inherit from it. The molecules that ease pain, calm fever, or restore balance all began as messages written in the chemistry of life, signals exchanged between species that learned to survive together. When you trace medicine's path from leaf to laboratory, a pattern emerges. Nature designs with patience, science responds with curiosity. Together they evolve toward understanding. The bark of the willow became aspirin, the mold became penicillin, the venom became pain relief, and the code of DNA became a library for regeneration. Each breakthrough was less a conquest than a translation, a human attempt to read what the earth had already written. In this way, every generation of healers has built upon the one before. Indigenous knowledge taught observation, chemistry taught analysis, biology taught empathy for systems larger than ourselves. Now, in the age of biotechnology and genetic design, the lesson grows simpler again. Cooperation sustains life. Whether through the roots of plants or the genes in our cells, healing begins with respect for the intelligence that runs through all living things. The continuity of healing is visible everywhere. In forests, where plants exchange nutrients through fungal networks to keep one another alive. In oceans, where coral polyps share their pigments with algae to survive the sun. In the human body, where cells communicate through molecular signals to repair and renew. These are not separate stories but expressions of one principle, that life endures through collaboration. As science advances, it returns closer to its origin. The most sophisticated laboratories now mimic ecosystems, closed loops of balance, where nothing is wasted and everything transforms. The medicines of the future may come not from domination or extraction but from partnership, therapies that grow, adapt, and dissolve as naturally as rain returning to the sea. The boundary between healer and environment will continue to blur, until the act of caring for the earth and the act of caring for the body are seen as the same. If you listen closely, you can feel that truth within yourself. The rhythm of your breath matches the pulse of the air around you. The calcium in your bones once belonged to an ancient ocean. The iron in your blood was forged in a star. Every heartbeat is a continuation of creation, every moment of rest a renewal of the oldest contract, life sustaining life. Tonight, as your thoughts drift and slow, let the story settle within you. You are part of this chain of healing, from seed to cell, from knowledge to kindness. The discoveries of science are not endings but invitations to live gently, to observe deeply, to protect what gives rise to health. The earth does not ask for gratitude, only recognition that in every medicine, every breath, every act of care, we are remembering what it taught us first. The forest still breathes, the oceans still whisper, and the chemistry of renewal continues quietly inside you. Rest, knowing that life is always repairing itself, that the same wisdom shaping galaxies and genes guides your own restoration tonight. We from Sleepy Stories wish you a good night.